أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين لا سيما مولاي وسيدي صاحب الأسر والزمان روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء وأجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف ولعنة دائمة على أعدائهم ومنكر فضائلهم الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين أما بعد فقد قال الله الحكيم في كتابه المبين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ومن الناس من يشتري لهو الحديث ليضل عن سبيل الله بغير علم ويتخذها هزوا أولئك لهم عذاب مهين صدق الله العلي العظيم. For the hastening of the return of our 12th Imam, Imam al-Hujjah, for the purification of our hearts and our souls, and for the purification of the majlis of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salatu wassalam, one loud salawat upon Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمسابنا بأبي عبد الله الحسين عليه الصلاة والسلام. May Allah grant each and every one of us a grand reward for the continuation of these virtual commemorations as we gather in our homes to remember the supreme sacrifice of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, peace be upon him, and his family and friends on the 10th of Muharram on the plains of Karbala. We continue in this Muharram commemorative series where we are looking at the theme of dealing with temporal strife through living a Quranic life. How to understand the challenges that you and I face in this world, this upside down world that we live in, where things, as much as we think, that things are going normal, that things get turned upside down for us, as we see happening with COVID-19 around the world today. How do we deal with such difficulties and even the personal challenges that we face within our lives? In this series, we've been wanting to look at look at many of the difficulties that we face, and to draw inspiration from Kalamullah, the noble Quran, the words of Allah, of how we can deal with the difficulties in our lives. To realize that this book of Allah is not just a book to read in beginning of a majlis, or at a funeral, or at a wedding, or in special occasions, but rather that we as believers begin to take an active role in reading and reflecting and understanding and trying to implement the ayat of the Quran in our daily lives. Because as we said from the very first night, that this book contains answers for all of our problems. We just need to look at the book in the right way, with the right vision, with the right understanding, and we will get the answers that we are searching for in life. Tonight, in the 6th night of Muharram, we look at our topic of entertainment, the Quranic perspective on permissible and impermissible. The verse which I began with comes to us from a very beautiful chapter of the Quran known as Surah Luqman, chapter number 31, verse number 6. Now, let me just mention one or two things about Luqman. He's a very interesting character if you get a chance to study about him. He was, as we have been told in the hadith, a man from Africa. He was given an opportunity by Allah to either take nubuwah, prophethood, or hikmah, wisdom, to become a wise man. And he passed up the opportunity for nubuwah, and he was given this level of hikmah. And Allah makes note of this even in the Quran, where He says, وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا لُقْمَانَ al-hikmah, that Allah says that we have given Luqman wisdom, hikmah. And the chapter, actually a very beautiful chapter, again it's a discussion that he has with his young son, where he gives his son lots of advice on how to live life. And it shows us, even as believers, and especially as parents, as the fathers who are watching tonight, the role of a father in upbringing his children, the way that he talks to his son, the advice that he gives him, the discussions that he has with his young child. In one of the verses, in verse number 6, Allah gives forth this very important commandment for us. Let me first go into why this verse was revealed. As we know that the Quran, the ayat come down for certain reasons. Things were happening in Mecca or in Medina, which necessitated Allah to reveal ayat to the Prophet to explain the situation further for the community. So we're told that there was an individual in Medina who was a believer. He was apparently a Muslim, and he went out and he bought a slave girl as a woman that would be in his house to provide entertainment, as a singer, as a dancer. Obviously, they didn't have, television and the things like that we have today. And so you would go in the market, and yes, slavery existed at the time of the Prophet. It was a slow eradication, a slow process to eradicate it. So he purchases a slave woman from the market, and her responsibility was to provide entertainment at home, to sing, to dance for him. And this obviously is something which not only is haram, and we'll look at that in our discussion tonight about certain issues about the permissible and impermissible, but this was something obviously that was keeping him away from the remembrance of Allah, as entertainment many times does even to you and I today. And so this verse comes down to Rasulullah, which says, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ, and of the people, مَنْ يَشْتَرِي لَحْوَ الْحَدِيثِ لِيُذِلَّ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. And amongst the people is somebody who purchases this idle talk, this diversionary talk, which leads people astray from the Quran, from Allah, from all things holy. So they are purchasing, they are using money, they are going forth and expending time and resources to misguide not only themselves but other people from the path of Allah. بِغَيْرِ إِلْمٍ وَيَتَّخِذَهَا هُزُوًا, that they take the Quran for mockery, as a joke. أُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ مُهِينٌ. Allah says for them is a shameful, humiliating punishment. So this verse comes down to show the Prophet and the believers that, look, this diversionary tactic that is being used of entertainment, of pleasure, this was something which was looked very badly upon by Allah within the Quran, and the believers were made known in those days that, you know what, that this act of going towards the prohibited, to misguide people, to distance people from Allah, that this is something which is not allowed in Islam. It has consequences, it has ramifications, and it also has obviously a punishment in the world to come. Now with that, let me go into the introduction for tonight. And it's a very vast discussion. I'm going to try and keep it very focused for tonight. But we live in a society today, especially brothers and sisters, where from before our birth all the way up until our death, we are surrounded by enjoyment, pleasure, fun, entertainment. If you think about it, we have the hadith that Rasulullah says, seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. Today, not only in Canada, but in many Western countries, and I would even say in the Eastern countries, the so-called Muslim world, this problem is also rampant. That rather than seeking knowledge, talibul ilm, utlubul ilm min al-mahdi ila lahad, people are seeking entertainment from the cradle to the grave. What do I mean? Well, you look at the society that we live in today, and when a woman is pregnant with her children, with her child, many times you'll see this and you'll read this in news articles, or you'll see it on television, that the mother will, for example, sing songs to the baby. The mother will be on her tablet or her phone or on television watching things on the internet, and they're forms of entertainment for her, but the child in the womb is taking this information in. You may think, well, that's preposterous. How does the fetus that's still developing at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months in the womb, how can it actually react or understand things around it that is outside of its world that it's contained in? And this is a reality that you can look it up online, that the fetus does respond to outside stimulus. And that's why we're told in Islam for mothers that you have to be extra careful when you're pregnant of what you look at, what you listen to, what you eat, where you go, because all of these have an impact on the child. So, as I said, that we begin as a society that is steeped in fun, in pleasure, in entertainment, from pre-birth until we're born. Then, we have stores like Babies Are Us, like Toys R Us. Our children get caught up in games as a child, as a baby, as an infant, and they grow and they continue in that way. And as they get older, their toys get a bit more advanced, as we spoke about yesterday. And this continues all the way until we die. We're always surrounded by fun, by pleasure. You go shopping, you go into the mall, you go into the store, there is music playing. You go in an elevator, there is music playing. You go anywhere today, at school, at work, there's always some form of fun or entertainment or music to keep us busy in different ways. Now, let me give you some statistics. Unfortunately, statistics about Canada I was not able to find. I'll give us our neighbors to the south. Although there is a vast difference, I would like to think, between Canadians and our culture and our American counterparts. But we do have some similarities, obviously. Statistics tell us that in America, this is going back about 5 years ago, the average American spends $3,000 every year on entertainment. So that could be watching movies in the theater, downloading or purchasing apps on your smartphone, games and things like this, your video streaming services, subscribing to YouTube, let's say, all forms of entertainment in 1 year. The average American spent about $3,000. That's about $8, $9 every day for an entire year. Now you're probably thinking, well, that's not a lot of money. $10 a day, $30 a month, $3,000 a year, just a little over $3,000 a year. Contrast that with what the World Bank says. The World Bank says that in 2017, so just 3 years ago, about 60 to 70% of the population on Earth, people who are living in poverty, were living on less than $3 a day. That was their entire amount that they had for food, for clothing, and all medical and whatever necessities in life. So whereas the average Canadian or American is spending anywhere from $7 to $10 a day on fun, the average North American, Canadian American is spending, or they're spending that $10 at least a day on things that bring about fun or entertainment or pleasure in life. Now let me take this one step further before I go into, again, the crux of the issue from the Quran and the position of Islam. Is that the same World Bank and other such organizations have come out and said that every day on Earth, 30,000 children die because of poverty, malnutrition, and whatever other issues they're facing. 30,000 every single day. And at the same time, they tell us that if we wanted to wipe out global poverty, to ensure everybody on Earth had a chance to live, had food, clothing, shelter, medicine, whatever basic human needs that they need, all we would have to spend is $170 billion a year. Now that's obviously a lot of money, $170 billion a year. But keep in mind that in 2020, this year, America as a country and the people of America are going to spend close to $720 billion on entertainment. That means that if every American were to spend just 25%, 20 to 25% less on entertainment, so instead of $10 a day, they spent $7, or $7.50. So just $2.50 a day less. Just Americans alone, if that was donated to respectable charities that work for the people, that could alleviate and remove poverty across the entire planet. Every country in the world, whoever was poor, could be taken care of if the average American, or we could say North American, just spent 20 to 25% less on entertainment. So I don't just give out these facts and figures, for us to say, well, we should give in charity. No, that's not the goal, or that's not the point of tonight's discussion. The point is that as a human society, we have to realize that, yes, we have priorities in life. We need to have food, clothing, shelter. We need entertainment. We need fun as well in life. Nobody's doubting that. You come home from a hard day at work or a hard day at school. You need to sit down and maybe watch TV for a while, watch some wholesome entertainment on the internet, have a bit of fun in life. Is entertainment all bad? Obviously not. I'm not saying that, we throw away our television, or we just listen to Quran all day, or the du'as or munajat, or we only engage in the dhikr of Allah 24 hours a day. The Prophet never condoned that. The Imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam never condoned that. And in fact, we have hadith that tell us from Rasulullah, from the beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, where he warned us. He says that I warn you about ghulu fid deen, extremism in your religion. He tells us to be careful, do not become extremists in religion. Don't become so, rigid and hard that all it is praying and fasting and worship. No, we have to have fun in life. We have to take time off in our lives to have entertainment. In fact, in the hadith that comes to us from many imams, including the 8th Imam, Imam al-Radha, may God's peace and blessings be upon him, he talks about the fact that a believer needs to have time management. Manage the day, break it up into 4 pieces or into 4 sections, or have multiple, have time in the day to take care of various responsibilities. And in the hadith, the 4th portion is where he says that you have to take time out of your day to enjoy the halal pleasures, the legitimate pleasures. And the Imam says when you take care of that, then you'll be able to fulfill the rights of Allah, the rights of your family, and the rights that your own body have upon you. So we're not saying that we cut out entertainment from our lives. No, we're saying that we need to understand what is permissible. Why is it permissible? We have to understand what is haram, what is impermissible. Why is it impermissible? What is the red line that Islam draws between the halal and the haram? What is allowed and what is not allowed? Now, obviously, I'm not here to force this down your throats. People will do as we want to do. But I would like to share with us tonight the Islamic approach to entertainment. What is allowed in Islam? What is not allowed? And hopefully you'll take from this and go and do your own research and recognize the fact that whatever Islam has allowed us to do, whatever is halal, as the hadith tell us, is because there is a benefit for us in the world to come, obviously, but also in this world. And as the hadith says, that whatever is detrimental, whatever is hazardous, whatever is a danger to your health, to my health, in the world to come and in this world, Allah has made that haram, impermissible. And inshallah, we'll try and see how we can come to an understanding of what Allah has allowed and what Allah has not allowed. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. One of the things that we have to reflect upon, I would say, is that just supposing that all forms of entertainment were halal for us, as with many people out there who maybe don't follow a religion, who don't necessarily have a code of ethical conduct that they have been given by their parents or their family or the community, and just they lead what is called a hedonistic lifestyle. This is actually a real term in today's day and age. People who follow hedonism, which basically means you do what you want to do. If it feels good, do it. Don't worry about what other people say. There are people who have this very narrow mindset today in the world. Now, if even Islam, if it was allowed to do whatever we wanted to do, we should ask ourselves that does a lot or does anything that we do, does it have an impact on us? Does it impact us in any way? Does it affect our mind? Does it affect our soul, our spirit? Does it affect the way that we relate and interact with other people, whether it's our family or our friends or our schoolmates? Does what we consume in our head, through our ears or our eyes, does this impact us? Because, today, the medical experts and the health practitioners and people who are nutritionists, they tell us that, when you go out grocery shopping, read the label. Look at the fat content, look at the sugar content, look at the cholesterol, look at the sodium. Because they say that all of this food that we buy, especially processed food, they tell us that, this is very dangerous for the human. Eating food which has high levels, high calories within it, some of the processed packaged food has high levels of sodium, high levels of sugars, that they tell us all of this is dangerous for the human health, for the physical body. You can get diabetes, you can get heart disease, you can get so many sicknesses, and eventually, obviously, you could physically die by not watching what you eat. And so I have to ask ourselves, and we have to ask ourselves this question, that is there a similar correlation to what we take into our heart, what we listen to, what we look at, the video games that many of our youngsters play, and even the older people in the community? Is there an impact on the human soul with all of this entertainment that we are again surrounded with from the day that we're born or before our birth, all the way until our death, at school, at work, so on and so forth? Do you and I actually recognize impacts of modern entertainment on our personal lives? Do we even think about this ever? That why did Allah tell us all of this was haram? Why did Allah say music, for example, of a certain type is haram? Why are certain things prohibited in Islam and certain things are allowed? Is it only that Allah wants to make Muslims to be boring people? That we don't have fun in life? That we just focus on the akhirat? Obviously not. But just as I said that we look to what we eat and we are careful of what we consume, we have to ask ourselves, are we careful of what we consume within our heart? And I would say this before we move on in this discussion tonight, that each and every one of us, if we're listening to the haram, if we're engaged in the haram, especially music is what I want to look at tonight because of this verse of Surah Luqman, chapter 31, verse 6, is that we have to ask ourselves sincerely the question of what impact that music is having on our soul. Nobody can answer that for you. This is something which each and every one of us, if we're listening to the haram music, that we have to ask ourselves, is this impacting me? Am I being told by my parents, for example, or my siblings, my brothers, my sister, or my community that, you know what, there's a change in your attitude, there's a change in your character? We have to look at all of these aspects, brothers and sisters, because as we will see that music is not as innocent as the system that we live in makes it seem to be. Again, going back to the verse that I began with, when Allah says, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يَشْتَرِي لَحْوَ الْحَدِيثِ لِيُضِلَّ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَيَتَّخِذَهَا هُزُوًا. When the Imams of Ahlul Bayt were asked, what is lahul hadith? Because this term, lahul hadith, as we know, lahu, we talked about this last night from chapter 57, Surah Al-Hadid, where Allah talked about the life of this world, hayatul dunya, being la'ib wa lahu, and zinat and tafakhur and takathur. So one of those stages was the stage of lahu. So when the Imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhum as-salam were asked, what is lahul hadith? Literally they said in the tafsir of this verse, and this is a hadith found in Mustadrak al-Wasail in volume 13, the sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, may God's peace and blessings be upon him, he gave the tafsir of lahul hadith in this verse as being al-ghina. Al-ghina being music. Now I'll have to also unpack what music is, and I'll do that a bit later. But the sixth Imam says that what Allah has referred to in this verse is music. That is what has been prohibited for the believer. So right off the bat, if we were to look at this hadith and say that I will accept if the Prophet or Imams tell me that this is about music, that I would stop listening to music. Well, this hadith right then and there in black and white, the sixth Imam was asked, what is lahul hadith, this vain talk? Hadith being talk, words, discourse. What is lahul hadith, this vain talk, this worthless talk that has no purpose in life? It's music. And you know, those who listen, or even if you don't listen, but if you just go online and read the lyrics of the top music that the kids are listening today, you would see how vain the talk is. It's mostly about negativity. It's mostly profanity. It's mostly about alcohol, about drugs, about sexual relationships. There's very little, if any, in the top 40 industry of music at least, that is a positive message. Because there are forms, and we'll mention this, that are permissible in Islam. But now maybe as a young man or young woman or an older person, you may say to me, well, Shaykh, you know what? I'm listening to the music with my headphones on. I'm in my bedroom. I'm out for a walk. I'm out playing sports. I'm on the bus going to school. I'm in my car driving to work. I'm not bothering anybody. What problem is there if I have my headphones in and I'm listening to some music? It's not hurting anyone, right? I'm not bugging anybody. There's no problem, right? And what we have to realize, even if we take it outside of the realm of Islam, we look at it just from a scientific perspective, let's say, there is still a problem with the entire composition. Again, I will look at maybe very briefly near the end of what is halal in terms of music, but a majority of what is out there today, like maybe 95% of the music that the children are listening to, that's on the radio, that's on Spotify, that people are listening to on YouTube, this is mostly to do with haram. And if you look at any musical piece, you'll have two components. You'll have the music, the actual beat, and you'll have the lyrics. You look at the lyrics, as I said, if you just do an analysis of the top 40 music of any given time, look at what's online and they'll tell you the artist and the song, and then you go and find the lyrics and you read the lyrics of what the youth of today are listening to, and you will find that 75 to 80 to 90% are about three or four things. One is about relationships between men and women, illicit, haram relationships. It'll be about drugs. It'll be about alcohol. Some of it will be very violent in nature. And most of it is full of profanities, of swear words, which as Muslims we know is problematic to use and also to listen to. Now you might tell me, well, you know what, there's a lot of positive music out there. There are Muslim musicians who make positive music with good lyrics, and that I can listen to. It doesn't distance me from Allah. The verse says, لِيُذِلَّ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. I'm not being misguided or deviated by listening to the halal music. And there are many groups out there that claim to be making what they call halal Islamic music. But we also have to realize the fact that if you get caught in a habit of listening to even what we might deem as halal, there is a very strong possibility, I'm not saying it's a 100%, but it's a very strong possibility that you will then begin to drift into the haram. You might be listening to something, and on your YouTube list, maybe something will be suggested for you to listen to, and you might just click on it innocently. And that can have the potential to start you down the path. Again, I'm not saying it's going to happen 100%, but there is a strong possibility that once you get on one path, Iblis, Satan, the devil, whose job it is to misguide you and I from the path of Allah, that he will begin to instruct us, tease us, tempt us to just listen to something which might be borderline haram and halal. It's a very strong possibility. So at one level is the lyrics. This is a problem, brothers and sisters. And don't say, I'm impervious. They're talking about drugs. I don't do drugs. They're talking about alcohol. I don't drink. They're talking about, relationships with the opposite gender. I keep away from that, but I just like the music. These lyrics have an impact on our soul. And if that was not the fact, much of the music that has a lot of vulgarity, a lot of negative content, they wouldn't have parental guidance labels on them that, over 16 or over 18 can't, buy that. Because they realize that when we're young especially, that this music can make an impression on our mind because we're much more impressionable at those young ages. So the lyrics we have to be very, very aware of. But what about the music itself, the actual tone, the content of what is being played? Scholars of the sciences, not Muslim scholars, but scholars in terms of sociology, of psychology, they've actually done a lot of research on the effect of music on the human mind and the dopamine levels, these levels of the brain's reaction to when it hears things. And they've actually come up with studies and research, even some research that was done in McGill University in Montreal in Canada, which went to show how the effect of music on the human mind is similar to that of taking drugs. So some of the same levels of ecstasy, of joy, of euphoria that people feel when they smoke marijuana or where they inject a drug. Some of the research points to the fact that listening to music triggers those same hormones within the brain. It does something to the mind. And look online, there is much research done even about why they play certain music in the stores. Why is it, let's say at a certain time of the year, a certain music is playing in the store? And they've shown how, through research, how they are able to control the spending habits of people when they come shopping, depending on the music that the store is playing. They've done tests that when they play certain music in a certain store, people stay longer. They graze around, they walk through every aisle, and they spend more money. So don't think that the music industry is all innocent and is just there to provide us with relaxation and enjoyment after a hard day at work or at school. No, it is they know very well what they're doing, right? The billions of dollars they spend in the music industry and on many other areas related to this form of entertainment, it's not innocent by far. It's for an ulterior motive. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not, going to these strange websites that talk about these things as these are all plans of the Dajjal or the pharaonic system or the devil. This is a reality that you can actually go and research and Google for yourself. That what is the effect of music on you as a human being? Not only on your soul, but even on your physical body. How does music impact you? Now, as I said, that not all music is haram. And for example, His Eminence Ayatollah Al-Udma Sayyid Ali Al-Husseini As-Sistani, may Allah protect and preserve him and all of our grand scholars. He was asked this question in one of his books of Islamic rules about music. And in rule number 535, he is quoted as saying that music is an art that has spread far and wide during these days. Some varieties of this art are permissible, while others are forbidden. Therefore, he says it is permissible to listen to the first, and it is haram, forbidden, to listen to the forbidden type of music. He gives a general classification where he says in the next ruling that music that is permissible, that entertainment music that is allowed to listen to, is that which is not used in gatherings of that purpose. Meaning that if there's a particular song that you listen to that is heard where haram takes place, in a nightclub, in a bar, in that kind of, in a party environment, then that would be haram to listen to. Even if it talked about Allah. And most of that music that the youth listen to today does not talk about Allah. But if you find music with appropriate lyrics and appropriate tune that doesn't go into that level of profanity, vulgarity, the haram, then he says that this is permissible to listen to. But again, let me give you that disclaimer that keep in mind that even if you find that music, there's always a possibility, a challenge that you may end up drifting towards listening to the impermissible as well. I'm not saying it's going to happen for sure, but there's always a possibility in life. So, what is the understanding? Or where do we go with this? Some of it is halal, some of it is haram. Am I saying that we just, again, listen to Quran all day? No. Do we not have fun in life? No, we're not saying that either, and Islam doesn't say that. The Quran doesn't say that. But we have to realize, brothers and sisters, that dealing with difficulties in life, we have to, and how to let off steam, how to enjoy our lives, how to relax, which is, again, a very important part of human existence. And the Imams of Ahlul Bayt have recognized that and encouraged us to spend time having fun. But make sure it's purposeful, it's meaningful, it's beneficial. It's not going to harm you. Right? Just like food, the example I gave just a few moments ago. You and I have to eat food to survive. We can either eat food which is high in cholesterol, high in fatty acids, high in sugar, high in sodium, and then after 10, 15 years get a heart attack and die, or get diabetes and live with having our leg or our arm amputated or becoming blind. Like extreme cases of what happens with diabetes, with type 2 diabetes, with people who don't take care. And so we watch what we eat. We can do the same thing with entertainment. We can either listen to the haram, which will impact my heart, impact my connection to Allah, impact my family relationship. Or we can seek out permissible means of entertainment, of halal pleasure in life, and find what it is. And if we find that we don't have much, then as a community, we have to create that. If the youth find that, we don't have anywhere where we can gather on a Friday night, Saturday night with our own Muslim youth, our own Shia youth to just have fun, then the elders, the parents, the community leaders, they have to step up and say, well, we'll have a building, or we'll rent a gymnasium, or we'll do something to keep the youth active, to be hanging out with one another, to engage in halal entertainment. Let me conclude before I go into the remembrance of the tragedy of Karbala with a last hadith that comes to us from our second Imam, Imam Hassan ibn Ali al-Mujtaba, alayhimus salatu wassalam, in which he has a very beautiful statement. He says in the hadith, he says, Ajibtu, I am surprised. What is he surprised at? He says, Ajibtu liman yatafakkaru fi ma'kulihi. Kayfa la yatafakkaru fi ma'kulihi. I'm surprised at the person who thinks about what he eats, that he makes sure that it is healthy, it's halal, it's tayyib, it's organic in today's terminology. Kayfa la yatafakkaru fi ma'kulihi. However, he doesn't think and ponder about what goes into his aql, into his intellect, into his mind. He says that this person avoids the harmful foods from going into his stomach, but he allows his spiritual heart to be the rendezvous point of all of the deviated and low teachings. And really this hadith, if we were to take it and print it out and paste it on our wall in our room or in our living room or on the kitchen table or wherever we are, or put it on our computer and reflect on this hadith every day, we would realize how true the Imam's words are, that we in today's society especially, We give so much importance, and I don't say this is wrong, it's great. We give so much importance to eating healthy. You see organic food, chickens which are free-range chickens, eggs which are coming from hens which are free-range. They feed them natural. We put so many billions of dollars into organic food, but how much do we put forward in terms of organic knowledge, organic education, organic entertainment, halal entertainment, halal fun, halal pleasure, halal enjoyment, especially for our young brothers and sisters, our young children of our community, who are living again in a society full of entertainment, of haram entertainment. As parents, as educators, as community leaders, we have to reflect and say that we need to begin, if we haven't already done so, to invest in infrastructure for our next generation, for them to have a balanced life. We've got masajid, we've got the Husainiyah, we've got the Islamic centers. We now need to make areas where our youth can have fun in a halal environment, where they can interact with one another in a permissible way. And this is the job of the Quran, to teach us what is right and what is wrong. And it's the role of the Ahlul Bayt, the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salatu wassalam, to put us on that path of recognizing our obligation to Allah and to the Holy Quran. Tonight, my brothers and sisters, as I conclude in this part of the majlis, I want to, on this 5th day of Muharram, the 6th night that we will be entering into, I wanted to remember one of the elderly companions of Abu Abdullah al-Husayn alayhi salam, and that is none other than Habib ibn Madahir. Habib, there's difference of opinion. Was he a Sahaba of the Rasul, or was he a Tabi'een, one of those who came after the companions? But whatever the case may be, we know that he had a love for Rasulullah. He had a love for the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. And when the tragedy of Karbala happened in the year 61 after the Hijrah, Habib at that time was in the city of Kufa. And as you and I know, that Kufa was on lockdown. Muslim ibn Aqil had been killed in Kufa because of his kind of trying to drum up the support of the people of Kufa who had pledged allegiance to Abu Abdullah. But Habib ibn Madahir, a man of apparently 75 years of age, one night while he's at home with his wife and young child, young son, and the servant was at home, a knock comes at the door, and it's a messenger that has been able to sneak and get to Habib's house with a letter from Abu Abdullah al-Husayn. Now keep in mind, this is on the 8th of Muharram, the 8th of Muharram rather. This man gives a letter to Habib, and Habib reads the letter, and he goes to his wife, and his wife says, "Who was at the door?" And Habib says, "This was a messenger from Abu Abdullah, from my master, from Sayyidi Abu Abdullah al-Husayn." And she asks him, "Well, what does Hussein want? Where is he? What's happening?" And Habib tells her that this is a situation that my master, he's in Karbala, he's in this desert just outside of Kufa. He's trapped, and he's asking for me to come and help. And at first Habib rather, and scholars debate why he said this, but at first he told his wife that there's no way I'm going to go. And his wife began to push him that, "What do you mean you cannot go? This is the son of the daughter of your prophet. How can you not go and help him in this time of need?" And Habib, we were told, just played this game to see what his wife's reaction would be. And Habib then tells his wife, he says, "No, recognize that I am going to my master, Sayyidi." And he bids his wife farewell. He bids his son farewell. He tells his servant to go in the middle of the night and take his horse and prepare his horse and make his way stealthily out into the outskirts of the city of Kufa. Wait outside of the gates of Kufa, Habib tells his servant, he goes, "And I will be there to meet you and to go towards my master." So brothers and sisters, it was on the 8th night of Muharram that Habib ibn Madahir, the 75-year-old man, a man who had seen so much in his life, that he bids farewell to his beloved wife, he bids farewell to his son, and whoever else was with him in the family. He makes his way out from the home towards the outskirts of Kufa. And when he reaches to the outskirts of Kufa, in the night darkness of the night, he hears his servant talking to the horse. His servant is speaking to the horse and telling this horse, he's saying that, you know what, if my master Habib doesn't come, if he gets captured along the way by the forces of Ubaydullah bin Ziyad Mal'un, he says, you recognize, bear witness, O horse, that you and I will go to Abu Abdullah and we will be in the place of Habib and we will support Abu Abdullah alayhi salam. It was at this point that in the darkness of the night, Habib makes his way to the servant, to his horse, and he says to his servant, he says, "Idhab anta hur liwajhillah." He says, go, you are free. I have freed you in the pleasure of Allah. His servant looks at Habib and he says, oh my master. He says that how can it be that you are going forth towards Jannah, that you are going forth to help the son of the daughter of Rasulullah, and you want me to go towards the fire of hell? He says, no, la wallah. He goes, no, that is not possible. He says, allow me to come with you. He says, you have freed me for the sake of Allah, but now allow me to come with you and let us go together to support Abu Abdullah. Habib gives his servant permission. He mounts on the horse. They mount together and they ride towards Abu Abdullah in the darkness of the night. How they got to Abu Abdullah, we have no idea, with all of those thousands of soldiers that were guarding and that were making a way for nobody to come to Abu Abdullah. But somehow Habib made it to his master on that night. Brothers and sisters, the books of Maqtal mention that it was on that 8th night of Muharram that Abu Abdullah was distributing the flags. He was giving each flag to every commander of the army who would take a group of soldiers on the day of Ashura. As all the flags had been given out on the 8th night of Muharram, Abu Abdullah had one last flag in his hand. And the companions would say to him, they would say, Ya Sayyidi, that who is this last flag for? Give it to this person, give it to that person. And Imam Hussein would continuously tell his ashab, his companions, he says, the person whose right it is for this flag, the commander of that part of my army, he's on his way. Don't worry, he'll be here and he will get the flag which he deserves. As Abu Abdullah is saying this in the darkness of the night, some of his companions, they come to Abu Abdullah. They say, oh my Sayyidi, oh my master. They say that we see in the distance that there's some dust coming up. There's somebody who's coming towards us. Who could this person be? Is it an enemy soldier? Is it one of the enemies from the force of Ubaydullah bin Ziyad? Maybe they're coming to launch a night attack on us. Who could this person be? It's at this point that Abu Abdullah, he tells this individual, he says, don't worry. He says that the Shaykh is coming, the elder for our community, the commander for this last part of my army is coming. And sure enough, a few moments pass, and as they are looking towards this individual, they realize that it is Habib ibn Madahir and his servant. The books of Maqtal mention at this point, Habib jumps off of his horse. He falls to his knees in front of Abu Abdullah. He gives his love to Abu Abdullah. Abu Abdullah embraces Habib ibn Madahir. Habib says to his Imam, he says, Assalamu alayka ya Abu Abdullah. My greetings, my salutations upon you, ya Abu Abdullah. He says, may we thank God, Alhamdulillah alladhi wafakani li nusratik. All praise belongs to Allah for giving me this opportunity to be here to help you, to serve you, to give my life in your way to protect you. Imam replies saying, oh, my uncle, my dear uncle Habib, alaykum salam to you. May God's peace and blessings be upon you. Imam Hussein then hands that last flag, that last alam, that ra'iyah to Habib ibn Madahir. Habib then goes to greet the other companions, the family of the Ahlul Bayt who were there on that night of just before 2 days before the day of Ashura. Zainab alayha salam, Ummul Masa'ib is in her tent. She hears a commotion outside in the darkness of the night. Zainab alayha salam is wondering what's happening outside. Have the people begun to fight? Have the people begun to attack her brother Abu Abdullah? She turns to her nephew Aliun al-Akbar. She says, who is there out there who has brought help to this gharib? Who is there that is coming to assist this gharib Abu Abdullah? she is told by Ali al-Akbar, he looks out, he says that this is our uncle, oh Auntie Zainab, this is our uncle Habib ibn Madahir, he's just arrived to provide that assistance to Abu Abdullah. Zainab tells Ali al-Akbar, she says, please go and convey my salams to our uncle Habib ibn Madahir. At this point, Ali al-Akbar leaves the tent. He goes towards where Abu Abdullah is. He goes towards Habib ibn Madahir. He says to him, oh my dear uncle. He says, my aunt, Lady Zainab. He says, she sends her salams to you. Habib begins to look at Ali al-Akbar. That how is it that Ali al-Akbar is coming with this message? Habib takes some dirt from the earth of Karbala. He sprinkles the dust on his head. He begins to hit his face. He says, woe to me. He says, who am I that Lady Zainab, the daughter of Amir al-Mu'mineen, is giving me her salams? Habib breaks down in tears at seeing that at this sight. Habib then asks his master Abu Abdullah, he says, Ya Sayyidi, Ya Abu Abdullah, he says, do you give me permission to go to the tent of the ladies and to speak to Lady Zainab? Can I go and say a word to Lady Zainab alayhi salam? Abu Abdullah, we're told, gives him the permission. He goes towards the tent with eyes full of tears, with his tears dripping all over his grey beard, a man of 75. He approaches the tent of Lady Zainab and the tent of the ladies, and he says to them, Assalamu alaykunna ya ahl bayt an-nabuwa wa mawdi' ar-risala wa mukhtalaf al-malaika wa mahbit al-wahi wa tanzil. Assalamu alayki ya Zainab. He greets Lady Zainab alayha salam and the Ahlul Bayt, the ladies and the women of the caravan. And with that, Habib hears a voice coming from inside the tent, who says, Wa alayka salam, oh peace be upon you, oh our uncle Habib, oh our uncle. She says, I advise you. She says, Usika bihadha al-gharib, Usika bihadha al-gharib khayran. Do good to this stranger, this man Abu Abdullah, who's a gharib, who's in this wilderness of Karbala. She says, don't fall short of living up to your responsibility in terms of Abu Abdullah. Brothers and sisters, with that, on the day of Ashura, when Abu Abdullah, his companions are asking for permission to go, the 75-year-old man, Habib, who's so old, who's so decrepit at this point in his life, but still he has the love of Abu Abdullah. Whatever energy he has left, he asks for permission to go into the battlefield. He goes into the battlefield, even though he's so old, even though the enemies are so much younger than he is, even though the enemies completely outnumber him, but still he manages to kill many of the enemies and send them to their ultimate destination of Allah. But eventually he gets surrounded. He's attacked from many different sides. An enemy hits him again on his head. As many of the other people, they would fall off of the horse. And as Habib is falling off of his horse, he calls to his master Abu Abdullah. He says his final salams to his master Abu Abdullah. At that point, Abu Abdullah al-Hussein runs from where he's at. He makes his way to the battle as the enemies disperse. And as he has done with many of his companions, he takes the head of Habib and he puts it within his lap. And he wipes off the blood. He wipes off the dust of Karbala over his face. And he thanks Habib ibn Madahir for even in this difficult time, at this old age that he was in, that he was there to help and to serve and to protect Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلِبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. We ask Allah on this 6th night of Muharram to give us all the ability to understand and recognize the haram from the halal. We ask Allah to give us the ability that Allah knows we have busy lives, difficult lives. We need entertainment. We need fun in our lives. We ask Allah to guide us towards the halal pleasures of life, the halal entertainment in life, and that we can purify and keep our hearts pure by keeping away from the haram that is around us, that is a temptation to us every single day, so that we can meet our 12th Imam and that we can be his assistants and helpers to purify society and to bring about a government of justice and of perfection of humanity upon this earth.